Hello, guys, and welcome to Season 3, Episode 1, Finding Your Genre with Reilly Smith.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Inked Podcast. As with all of our past seasons of the show, today we bring back our normal host, Miss Reilly Smith, to guest once again as we give an introduction to this season's topic of exploring genres. And as for me, my name is S3E1, and I will be hosting this episode of the Inked Podcast. So, how are you doing today, Reilly?
I'm doing good. I'm really excited to be back in the guest show today, and I'm also very excited to hear Miss Sanaya host because she has been on before and she's such a fun personality, and I'm really excited to see what she does.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so excited to try this out, see how this goes. So, Reilly is, as always, the usual host of the Ink podcast, and she comes on every so often as a guest when we kick off a new season of the show. And today, she is going to help me break down genres a little bit, especially since I hear she dabbles in most every genre. So, is that correct, Reilly?
It is. I have dabbled in every genre from mystery all the way to high fantasy to low fantasy to like historical fiction, a pure historical base, like contemporary. I've done all of it, especially since I've been writing since about the age of 11. And it took me a very long time to finally find which genres kind of fit me best. So, yeah, I've definitely dabbled in almost every genre you can think of.
That is amazing, and I'm sure it keeps you on your toes a lot
Oh,
with going, yeah.
it absolutely does. And sometimes it gets really confusing because I still write in multiple different genres now. And so it's funny when I go from writing a mystery to writing a fantasy in the same day.
Oh my gosh, I am sure. So, why don't we jump into today's questions, starting with how would you explain what genre is in your own words?
So, genre, I would say, is the vibe, theme, or mood that you set for your story. It is how you decide to construct your story. Obviously, there are two main genres, and that is fiction and nonfiction. But there are tons of genres in both of those categories because in fiction there is like fantasy, high fantasy, low fantasy. There is like a lot of different mystery, anything fictional that is not real. And then obviously there's nonfiction, which is like biographies, like documentary type things, like factual stories. So all of that is kind of the basis of it. Your genre is what you're setting your story up to be, essentially.
Thank you so much for that. That really gave a sense of what genres are. So, how can you experiment with them? If there are so many, how can you do it in a way that really you are able to immerse yourself in each one properly?
So I would say like I said, I have written two genres in one day before, and I will say if you are someone who is searching for your genre for the first time and you are dabbling in a couple different genres, don't do them all at the same time. That is my
Mm.
biggest thing is don't do them all at the same time. Maybe try to write like a snippet or a story or like a short story in one genre and focus on that for a while and then see if you like feel it kind of click and see if you feel like okay, this is me, like this is so easy to write. And then if you try a different genre and like it's really hard to write, then yeah, I would just say make sure you're not doing them in the same day, and also make sure you're finishing the story. So like a lot of the time people will start in one genre and they won't finish the story, and so they don't ever feel it click. And I will say finish writing the story. So like if you're writing a fantasy short story, finish that fantasy short story before you decide to do like a mystery short story. And eventually you will find something that by the end of that story it'll click, because it doesn't happen overnight and it doesn't happen immediately. You will feel it pretty quickly. Yes, like you'll get to the end of a story, or like you'll get to a particular part of the story and be like, yes, this is why I write in this genre, like this is why I want to continue to write in this genre. So to sum up those 3 points that I have just brought up is: one, make sure you're not doing them the same day; two, make sure you're finishing the story; and three, make sure that you feel it click before you just decide that this is your genre.
Yes, I love that. And I think to add to that, I think an amazing thing about exploring with genres is you will find sometimes that you actually enjoy writing a genre you never would have thought you would have actually enjoyed. You know what I mean? Because
Mm-hmm.
when I was writing my short story, I was I never thought I would get into fantasy writing.
Mm-hmm.
But by the time I was able to finish that, it was kind of the realization that, wow, if I had never tried that, I never would have known that I actually love fantasy, you know?
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure.
So, yes. So what just to with another question, how did you decide which genre matches you?
So, one thing I took into account was my personality. Obviously, I have a very chaotic personality. If you talk to my friends, they will tell you that. Um, a lot of people don't exactly know how to define me as a person. I have a friend actually who can't necessarily define me. She has a brain that compares people to colors. And so she has shown me her like chart, and on her chart where my name is, it is like a rainbow of colors. And she's like, I just can't quite define you properly with a single color. So that is why I, as a person, tend to write in many different genres. Even though I've kind of like found the one that fits, I still write in many others. I will say take into account your personality, your personal taste, and how quickly you adapt to writing that. So, like, one, personality. Like I said, it's you. So, like, your stories, you pour so much of yourself into them that you really should make sure that the story you're pouring yourself into, you fit into, type thing. So, like, fantasy works so well for me because it is very chaotic. There's a lot of things happening a lot of the time, and you can do so much with it. And it can be so many different things. So, that's kind of why I clicked with fantasy. And then your personal taste. If you have a genre that you really like to read in, then maybe you should try writing in that genre because that means you most likely like relate to it or you most likely fit into it. And then again, how quickly you can like get into it and how quickly you can adapt to it. Because if you are a really slow adapter to a genre, that means it's probably not for you. Because yes, we might grow up writing in one genre and then we get to our adult years and completely swap. Yes, that's true.
Hmm.
But when you're writing your genres, if it's like a slow transition and you don't really feel excited to write this story in this particular genre, then maybe that's not the genre for you. So it's just, yeah, it's just taking into account your own personality, the kinds of books that you read that might lead to possibly finding your genre, and then just how quickly you adapt to it.
That is amazing advice for anyone who really wants to figure out what genre suits them the best. Now, I just have one question, especially when it comes to people who want to write with a couple of genres, because there are some genres that really can mix well
Mm-hmm.
together, but it also can be a little bit overwhelming for the writer,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because there's a lot to think about, especially if you want to mix, say, romance and fantasy. So what would your advice be to someone who wants to kind of play around with two or three different genres in one story?
So I will say play around with it. That is my biggest piece of advice is before you commit to writing a full story in this mixed genre session, maybe like I said earlier, finish the story, but that is when you are messing with one genre. If you are messing with multiple genres in one story, play around with it. Try some scenes, try some story ideas, try some character ideas. Like see if that is really going to work for you. Because I personally, I have written romantasy. I have written historical fiction romances. I am a big romance girly. A lot of the time, that's what I write.
Mm-hmm.
So it is very much, and I actually recently had to make the decision to not make something a romance. I'm not going to say what it is because some of my readers of that do listen to this, and I would prefer that they not know. But I would say definitely play around with it. Try some practice scenes. Maybe if you have like a mystery fantasy novel, try to mess around with that mystery element in your fantasy novel. See if you can make that make sense. Because mysteries tend to be more factual and they tend to be more like clue, 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 like leads to the end of the mystery. While fantasy, like I said earlier, is a little more chaotic. It can be so many different things. You can mess around with it and kind of manipulate it how you want to. But in mystery, a lot of the times things have to make sense. So combining those two together, just play with it. Play with any kind of like mixed genres that you want to. Absolutely. So yeah, that's my biggest piece of advice. Just play with it.
Well, I must agree with you. It's hard to not add romance, especially a fellow lover of romance writer, but yes, I think you explained that so well and in such a way that it almost makes me want to go and write a mixed genre fantasy or romance or whatever. So thank you so much, Reilly. You are an exceptional host and also amazing at answering these questions. That is all the time we have today.
Absolutely. Well, I'm so glad that you could come back on as a host, Miss Sanaya. I'm very glad that you could come on. And I appreciate you interviewing me for the day.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.
And as always, I did not teach Sanaya the outro, so
okay, I was like, do I say that or do you?
I did not teach her the outro, so since we are out of time for the day, thank you to our listeners for being here, and we will see you in our next episode. Bye, guys!